Part 1, The Girl in the Garden. Florence, 1475. The air was thick with the scent of roses and citrus trees. A rare warmth lingered long into the spring evening as the sun spilled its last golden rays across the stone walls of the Villa Lemmy. Birds trilled softly as if whispering secrets through the cypress trees. In the garden, a young girl walked barefoot through the grass, her fingers trailing the air as though she were painting with it. Her name was Simonetta Vespucci. They called her La Bella Simonetta, and poets had already begun to carve her name into marble with verses soaked in longing. But this was before the fame, before the myth, before the paintings. Right now, she was just a girl of 17, lost in her thoughts and escaping a world of arranged futures. From behind the wrought iron fence, someone was watching. Sandro Botticelli stood in shadow, one arm resting on the crumbling wall, the other clutching a sketchbook. His eyes were fixed on the curve of her shoulder, the way the wind pulled at her linen dress like invisible fingers yearning to touch perfection. She did not see him. Or perhaps she did and chose not to. He was 30. Still struggling. Still unsure. But when he saw her that evening, when she turned just briefly and the light caught her face, something inside him shifted. It was not desire. It was recognition. He would never say it aloud, not even to his most trusted friend, but Sandro believed in omens. In signs. In invisible forces that guided a hand through brush and canvas. And he would later swear that in that exact moment, time itself bent inward. That Florence, the real Florence with its merchants and Medici, its blood and gold, disappeared and only she remained. She was not his yet. Not in paint. Not in memory. Not even in conversation. But he would find a way to capture her. Not as a woman. As a mystery. And mysteries, he would learn, are not meant to be solved. Part 2. The Face Beneath the Veil. Florence, 1476. The sky hung heavy over the Duomo that day, as if the heavens themselves were waiting for something. Botticelli stood inside Santa Maria Novella, staring at the frescoes. But his mind was not on saints or salvation. It was on her. He hadn't spoken to Simonetta Vespucci, not properly. A few glances exchanged at court functions, a brief conversation about Roman poetry at a Medici banquet. But nothing of substance. She remained distant. Not cold but untouchable, like a statue still wet with marble dust. And yet he couldn't escape her. He had begun sketching her face obsessively. On the back of receipts, on corners of canvases, even on the walls of his studio. Not quite portraits, fragments. A curve of a cheek. The suggestion of a jawline. Lips parted as if in secret speech. Each time he tried to finish one, something in him recoiled. To complete her would be to reduce her. And he couldn't bear the thought. Then came the commission. Giuliano de' Medici, handsome, bold, reckless, had commissioned a painting. A triumph, he'd said with a grin. A celebration of my tournament victory. I want Venus herself riding in a chariot of glory. Botticelli agreed, and Giuliano added with a smirk, and make her look like Simonetta. The words hit like thunder in Sandro's ribs. Giuliano was rumored to be her lover. No one spoke it aloud, but Florence had always fed on whispers. And Simonetta's name was on every tongue, even those stained with envy. Sandro accepted the commission. But when Giuliano left, the painter's hands shook. He would paint her. But not for Giuliano. Not for the Medici. For himself. Part 3. The Woman in the Canvas. Florence, 1476. They whispered about her long before her name became legend. Simonetta Cattaneo, the noble-born Ligurian beauty who stepped into Botticelli's world like a phantom from a dream. Her face, an ethereal blend of melancholy and serenity, was enough to make dukes stammer and poets ruin their pages with ink stains. But only one man truly saw her, not in flesh but as myth, as vision, as ache. Sandro Botticelli. He was not young when he met her. And she, already married to Marco Vespucci, cousin to the future explorer Amerigo, was draped in the luxury and political ties that surrounded the Medici court. But none of that mattered to Sandro. Not her silk, not her station, not even her marriage. She stepped into his studio for a commissioned portrait, and something ruptured inside him. She was not merely beautiful, she was unreal. And that terrified him. You look at me as if I were already dead, she once said to him, resting her hand on the polished wood of the chair he had prepared. No, he murmured. I look at you as if you were already painted. He sketched her obsessively. Hundreds of fragments. A wrist. An eyelid. The arc of her lips. Each drawing more sacred than the last. She became his obsession, his cathedral. The studio filled with her silence, her scent, the soft sound of her slippers on the marble floor. And yet, she remained just beyond reach, not for lack of desire but because he knew she was not of this world. The Medici knew it too. Lorenzo the Magnificent often commented that Simonetta was Venus reborn. She would sit in court surrounded by admirers, her blonde hair woven into braids like golden vines, her skin pale as alabaster, and yet her gaze always drifted, away from the noise, away from the men, to something unspeakable. She and Sandro never kissed, never touched, but they shared something far more dangerous. They dreamed together. He would show her half-finished canvases late into the night, whispering what he imagined the world could be: gods walking among mortals, seashells opening like birth canals, love blooming in mythic gardens. And she, smiling faintly, would nod, as if she remembered these worlds from some forgotten past. Then in the spring of 1476 she fell ill. No doctor could explain it. No potion would revive her. Her glow dimmed, her voice weakened, and still she insisted on sitting for him, pale, ghostly, wrapped in white linen like a bride waiting at the edge of death. "Paint me as Venus," she whispered one morning, coughing blood into her sleeve. "You already are," he answered. That was the last time he saw her alive. She died at 22. The bells rang through Florence like a wound. And Sandro stopped painting for weeks. But when he returned to his easel, he wasn't the same man. Something broke open. He no longer painted women, he painted her. Again and again. In every goddess. In every myth. She was the birth of Venus, stepping out of the shell, windswept and divine. She was Primavera, dancing with the Graces, surrounded by eternal spring. Even in paintings that had no name, she lingered, Simonetta, the ghost muse. Florence whispered, "Why does he paint her still? She's been dead for years." Doesn't he know? But he did. He knew. And when Botticelli died decades later, he made one final request: to be buried at the feet of Simonetta in the church of Ognissanti. Not beside family. Not near his peers. But near her. As if in death he might finally reach what in life he dared only dream. They buried him beneath the same frescoed ceiling where her name still echoed in stone. And in the silence of that church, the wind seemed to whisper a single word: eternal. Part 4, In the Mouth of Heaven. The wind carried the scent of salt and oranges through the arched windows of Lorenzo de' Medici's villa. Botticelli stood beside Simonetta, her profile illuminated by candlelight and the ghost of Florence's fading sun. She wore no jewels, only the silence of 1,000 words unsaid. "Do you love him?" Sandro asked, barely above a whisper. Simonetta turned. "You already know the answer." She was the wife of Marco Vespucci, a man of wealth, ambition, and power. A convenient marriage, arranged when she was 15. But her soul, Botticelli believed, had never belonged to any man. "I love beauty," she said, "but beauty is cruel. It asks you to stay while everything else begs you to run." He studied her features, her high cheekbones, the slight cleft in her chin, the arch of her brows, which he had redrawn so many times that they now haunted his dreams. She was no longer just a muse. She was a confession. That night, Botticelli began the birth of Venus. Not in public. Not in commission. Not even for Lorenzo. He painted it in secret, a canvas stretched in the attic of his studio, lit by a single lantern and his feverish obsession. Each night, he returned from banquets and ceremonies with the Medici and slipped into the darkness of creation. And each time he painted Simonetta's face, it came closer to something not even the gods could touch. He was becoming undone. Florence, spring of 1476. Simonetta had grown pale. Her laughter, once full of storm and sunlight, now came in fragments. Physicians whispered of consumption, of a shadow on her lungs. No remedy worked. Not even the prayers of nobles. Sandro visited her in secret, bringing her pomegranates and silks, sketching her hands as she lay in bed. She smiled despite everything. "Do you think the gods are jealous of us?" "Of you," he replied, touching the edge of her sleeve. "Not of me. No. Of what we could have been had the world allowed it." He could not speak. The canvas of Venus was nearly finished. But he was running out of her. At her funeral, the city wept. The churches overflowed. Botticelli didn't cry, not there, not in public. But when he returned to the attic, to her Venus, he placed a single hair of hers, golden, fragile, beneath the final layer of paint. A sacred burial. He refused commissions for weeks. When the birth of Venus was revealed to Lorenzo, and eventually to the world, no one knew the secret that pulsed beneath its waves and curves. They saw a goddess naked and divine. But Botticelli saw Simonetta, reborn not into heaven but into myth. He once told a friend, "When I die, bury me at her feet." And so they did. Final, the eternal muse. In the quiet halls of history, where time folds like fragile parchment, Simonetta's shadow lingers, an eternal muse caught between light and darkness. She was never just a woman. She was the breath of a dream, the flicker of a soul igniting the flame of creation. Sandro Botticelli painted her not to possess, but to free, to capture the fleeting, the intangible, the sacred mystery of existence itself. Her face, veiled in innocence and sorrow, became a symbol that beauty is born from pain, that inspiration rises from the ashes of loss. Centuries later, as eyes wander over the canvas of the birth of Venus, whispers of Simonetta's laughter echo through the brushstrokes, fragile yet unyielding. She is the silent promise that even in death, art endures, a beacon in the endless night. And perhaps, somewhere beyond the veil of time, she still walks barefoot in a garden, her fingers trailing the air, painting the world with the colors of eternity.